Alright, folks, had to come back to you early because two major events yesterday, besides the charade of a stupid VP vice president election, and why nobody's really asking the destruction of democracy the way Dhankar was, the previous VP was unceremoniously unseated, and that's the real news. But this is what we all should be worried about, right? In our neighborhood in Nepal, where we've tried to create this last Hindu kingdom unsuccessful venture of ours, and the Chinese try to create a whole bunch of issues with the Tibetans there, and also trying to take control of Nepal through this process of theirs. Oli was there, man. And look at what happened yesterday. And it started with this. Youth seethed in overnight social media ban in Nepal. We thought everything was going to be okay. Nepal opposes India-China trade through Lipule Pass. Delhi dismisses objection when I'm told when Oli took this to the Chinese said then that you kind of sort this out yourself. And then, what really happened was, it just kind of got crazy. Just look at these pictures. Himalayan firestorm engulfs Nepal. Down goes Willy Oli, and youth power does it. Youth power does it. Just see that. And what does it remind you of? It reminds you of two other neighboring countries in SAARC, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. And guess what they're after? They're after people who have become uncrowned kings, which are our politicians, which is in this case the BJP and the NDA, uncrowned media, uncrowned. Don't forget the IAS and the administrative. They are the ones who are going to get nailed if this fire reaches India, right? And will it reach India? You saw the joke on top, you see Nepal, the cartoon on top, and it says, Inshallah for Pakistan. Pakistan has already had that. The only country so far that looks to have survived, because we are such a big country like Russia and its war against Ukraine, and what Ukraine does to Russia, you don't see it because of its vastness. The same thing is happening. And yesterday, there were massive demonstrations, water cannons used, lathi charge in Patna. Then Manipur is actually symbolic and symptomatic of what's happening in Nepal, right? It's the anger of the youth, because there's desperation, there's no jobs, and they see all these big jokers get away with the like Jay Shah, and all the kids get away with all the wealth. That's what everybody's going to get angry at, right? Violence reveals the deep structural failures of Nepal's democratic experiment. Remember what Manmohan Singh said, that a democratic experience of India, you cannot take it for granted, and you cannot even take India's geographical construct as a given, because it's a very recent construct, and far older constructs, especially the USSR, Yugoslavia, have broken down under the weight of divisiveness and economic problems, and we are having both of them. Why the old regime in Nepal had to exit, a tech-savvy generation frustrated with ruling elite has decided to shape their country's future. What happens now, right, for India? Gen Z moment in Kathmandu. Youth anger against political elite topples the KP Sharma Oli government in Nepal. The youth anger here is simmering. A seasoned political survivor, Oli felled by a wave of public fury. It can happen to Modi and Shah, because they are creating an environment just conducive for this. Oli government failed to read anger of youth. Army will play key role. And I think here too the government is in a silo. They are not understanding the pain of the people, whether it's Bihar, whether it's UP, whether it's Madhya Pradesh. Gen Z oust Oli as turmoil continues to engulf Nepal. As Nepal burns, India reacts with caution. Modi appeals for peace. Modi should be worried. I would be worried if I was Modi. Gen Z fury unseats Nepal PM. Wife of ex-PM dies after home set on fire. Look at what they're targeting. They are targeting symbols of corruption and power, whether it's the assembly, which is the Supreme Court. Remember that too, folks. How 2015 earthquake created of one of Gen Z's top leaders. In Nepal, years of frustration with elitism, nepotism, graft, joblessness. This is exactly India. And if you don't understand that, you're fools living with your head in the clouds, right? Because this is terrible. Violent protests in Nepal, 19 killed. Eventually, it's on our border, UP border, where deprivation is at its worst. Bihar border, deprivation of it is at its worst. West Bengal. 3 cheers, folks. Gird up your seatbelts because here it comes. Here it comes.
This is CNN Breaking News.
All right, we do have breaking news. We are getting reports of explosions in Doha, the capital of Qatar, and beginning to see pictures coming back from that capital city. And we are getting word that this was part of a targeted Israeli attack. Let's get right to CNN's Jeremy Diamond in Jerusalem with the very latest. Jeremy, what have you learned?
John, this is an absolutely extraordinary moment that we are witnessing right now. A very large plume of smoke above the Qatari capital of Doha, and paired with that, an Israeli military statement saying that they have, quote, conducted a precise strike targeting the senior leadership of the Hamas terrorist organization, end quote. I have just gotten off the phone with an Israeli official who confirmed to me that that statement is indeed about that very same blast in Doha, meaning that the Israeli military, not even Israel's intelligence service, but its military, actually conducted a strike in Qatar.
The other event was of a nation gone rogue, breaking all international norms and rules and regulations by attacking technically a friendly country which they've signed the Abraham Accord with, which is Qatar. It reminds you of how India went about trying to bomb Israel and bomb Pakistan and hoping that it'll get away with it. I am not sure this is going to work, right? You really can't get up and go and attack Qatar, right? And I'm quite surprised. Qatar has all these, Patriot missiles and Rafales and F-16s and whatever else, and nothing came to their assist. The West all their partners failed them. Was this attack something that was supposed to happen? And it's a finger to Trump because the peace is being negotiated, right? And is it because of this? Netanyahu loses governing majority as ultra-Orthodox rift over draft deficits, okay? And they're drafting reservists. They're out of people, right? Israel targets Hamas leaders in Qatar as it weighs a US-backed truce deal. Now that's the sick part of it. 5 junior members of Hamas killed and not anybody they were really targeting. Israel strikes Hamas leaders in Qatar discussing Gaza ceasefire. World powers condemn Israeli strike on Hamas leaders in Doha. Israel's strike targets Hamas brass in Qatar, a Gaza war mediator. All top leaders survive, and India must also follow the lead of all the leading nations to condemn Israel. Because if you don't do that, folks, you are not safe from similar action on your soil. You better remember that. Don't think you're hunky-dory because you've got this chappanage. You're not, right? Israel bombs Syria as it vows to protect Druze community. So it just wants, folks, the war in the region to continue. Only Netanyahu, because he's trying to save his ass. He's trying to save his criminal ass, right? India, Qatar may finally finalize trade pact terms in October. So while this bombing is happening, the whole thing is just getting disrupted. You're doing a deal with India-Israel Inc. bilateral treaty to promote, protect investment. You're doing it with Qatar and Israel. And just look at the irony, right? Israel mobilizes reservists as part of Gaza City offensive. People are running away. The Israelis are running away. They're actually themselves quite cowards, right? These Zionists, the ultra-Orthodox people who are leading this, who want the entire Gaza, don't want to fight, right? I've just lost all whatever I have for the Jews. Right? Iran warns war with Israel could resume at any time. Israel has a deliberate policy of starvation in Gaza, says Amnesty, and we've all seen that. Israel mulls complete military takeover of Gaza. That's what they want, but they can't get it. Danish PM says Israel PM Netanyahu has become a problem, a huge problem. Australia will recognize Palestinian state at UNGA. France will recognize Palestine state. Macron first in G7 to do so. Okay. Spain, Ireland and Norway did so last year. Germany, UK to follow suit, right? Canada plans to recognize Palestine state, says Carney. And India signs up for 3-day UN meet for peaceful Palestine. But that's never going to happen. But so when you have all these guys write all this up, the two-state reality we see today written by Abdullah M. Abu, he says the world must stop treating Israel as a state above international law and indulging it as though it is spoiled, reckless, and adolescent. True that. Israel has failed to solve the Palestinian puzzle, and says Stanley John, and it never will. It says the 12-day conflict has not destroyed Iran's nuclear capabilities. This is a war that is far from over. And Iran came out and made a statement that their nuclear stuff is all still there. Benjamin Netanyahu pushed for a no-state solution, says Stanley John. Israel's prime minister wants only this: no sovereignty for the Palestinians, no state for the Palestinians, and no rights for the Palestinians. Well, he and Modi have something very common, right? Ultra-Orthodox party to quit Israel government over military draft. So they don't want to fight, just like the RSS really doesn't want to fight. You ask them to get drafted to fight the Pakistanis and China, they run. Right? The same thing with the ultra-Orthodox Zionist folks. Bunch of cowards. Three cheers. You've seen what CNN said about this attack. It's unbelievable. Right? See what's coming up.
With Russia boasting a much larger force than Ukraine and managing to make slow but gradual gains in regions like Donetsk, it's easy to assume that Russia and its president Vladimir Putin is winning this war. But digging deeper and considering tactics, strategy, momentum, morale, efficiency, economic conditions, and the countless other factors that influence the outcome of any conflict, a different picture emerges for many observers, one where Kyiv is in the ascendancy and Moscow is stuck in the mud. So, to believe Putin's winning is at best debatable, and there's an increasing amount of evidence cited to argue the opposite. There's also very little evidence that Putin can point to that would give Russia any sort of hope or optimism for the future. Yes, the country has made some territorial gains of late, estimated in the range of a few hundred square miles over the summer of 2025, but not in any great or game-changing amounts. Many of its victories are short-lived, and Ukraine is digging in and defending valiantly in the locations that matter most. So, while Russia may claim the odd sliver of muddy ground or abandoned settlement here and there, it's still struggling to make the kinds of gains it needs to actually impact the flow of the war.
So the other war criminal is obviously Putin, right? He bombed a bunch of and killed 21 pensioners. But folks, as you see from the videos I'm putting up, Russia is in trouble. So whatever it does, Russia hits Kyiv in largest air attack, key buildings hit civilians, and is trying to scare them so that Zelensky gives up. Right idea, Zelensky backs US tariffs over deals with Russia, will not end well. Navro continues tirade against India. And here you have French president briefs Modi on efforts to end Ukraine war. US president to ramp up sanctions on Russia. So this is the whole thing, right? Unfortunately, Trump is responsible, or the United States is responsible for what Netanyahu is up to and what Putin is up to. Unless they put unless it puts its foot down, Trump does, because he's the only one making decisions. These wars will continue for eternity, folks. No quick solution. 3 cheers and watch what's happening with us and the United States.
Really delighted to be here. I think the question you asked points to a bigger issue. And the bigger issue is, what is India's status in Trump's worldview? I think all the issues pertaining to oil, to trade, are in many ways secondary. The central question is that India does not have the primacy that it did for the last 25 years in the US calculus with respect to Asia and the world. And that is because Trump does not think of geopolitics in the conventional sense. Now, remember, ever since George W. Bush's presidency, India was really treasured by successive US administrations because we saw it as a pivotal partner in maintaining a global balance of power that favored American interests. I don't have priority that it once did. And so when you ask me whether India's collateral damage, it is. But it's not collateral damage in a trivial sense because of a policy towards Russia or a policy towards oil. It's collateral damage because the fundamental framing of India's importance in US policy has disappeared because Trump has a very different view of the world.
So you're suggesting, or rather saying pretty clearly, that the strategic importance that India had under Carter, under Bush, under Obama, even under Trump one, and certainly under Biden has disappeared. Today, India is dispensable.
I don't know if I would say it's dispensable, but it certainly does not enjoy the importance that it once did. And it does not necessitate the United States making special efforts to understand India's constraints, its exigencies, and its interests. And therefore, what you've seen in the last several months is essentially a policy that is driven entirely by a certain conception of American interests, which has very little room for allies, let alone partners. And India has become a hostage to essentially that turn of events.
I want very much to.
Now, between the strategy and between the personalism, we have ended up in a situation where our relationship has really taken big hits for ends that I'm not entirely clear about, and no one is.
But actually, tariff, it's not just limited to tariffs, oil, and geopolitics. Now, people like Howard Lutnick and the Department of Homeland Security are starting to attack the fundamental bedrock of the relationship, people to people relations between India and
25 years have appreciated, which is that India is a very valued partner in order to advance US interests, let alone India's interests. If you don't have your eyes on the ball with respect to these three considerations, then anything can happen. And what you have described is probably just the first of many more problematic things to come.
In other words, things will get a lot worse before.
More as an example of how pandering pays off. I don't know whether he is making an explicit calculation about how favoring Pakistan somehow undermines India or taunts India. I think it is more bilateral. The Pakistanis have done a remarkable job since the end of Operation Sindoor with respect to playing up to Trump. Then, when it comes to the issues of hyphenation, I fear that there is hyphenation already. In President Trump's mind, India and Pakistan are simply two parts of the same equation. As recently as a few days ago at his cabinet meeting, when he was describing his decision to impose these tariffs and his rejection of a trade negotiation with India, he spent a lot of time talking about the India-Pakistan crisis, which again, he emphasized has gone back for hundreds of years and so on and so forth. So in the president's mind, there's already high.
Well, welcome back, folks. You heard what Ashley Tellis is telling us about how India positions in the calculus of Trump. It just doesn't. And there are two other points that we just heard, that the US is re-engineering itself and withdrawing from everywhere and just wants the Western Hemisphere, and that's the Monroe Doctrine. Is that going to happen? Well, India is obviously toast, irrespective of Trump saying a great guy, not so great guy. But so you got to hear what different people are saying, and that really is the reality that you need to check in on, right? That's right, Bukul Keswan, blindsided by Trump, Modi is learning hard lessons about India's place in the New World Order. He says when Donald Trump won his second term, India's ruling elite must have been quietly pleased. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's performative quoting of King Donald, both in and out of office, suggested a special chemistry between these two titans of the hard right. Instead, Trump first slapped India in April with a 25% tariff that in itself exceeded that rate levied on most US allies. Modi's much touted special relationship with Trump now looks risible, risky. And it wasn't just the tariffs. India's short war with Pakistan after the Pahalgam terrorist atrocity in April saw Trump and his Vice President J.D. Vance treat India and Pakistan as squabbling South Asian neighbors that had to be brought to order by US. And Munir for lunch, right? Read it, what he says, brought to order by US intervention. This mortifying breakdown of relations has discredited Modi's decade-long effort to play the well-connected world statesman with a well, he didn't understand most of the stuff, right? Large countries such as India have geopolitical moorings that aren't easily loosened. The first one it managed to loosen was, they thought, was this, right? Non-alignment might now fly under the flag of strategic autonomy, but its aim is not dissimilar. India's ability to buy Russian oil, refine it and re-export it to Europe with the tacit blessing of the Biden administration was until recently seen as an example of this bloc-straddling suppleness, which Jaishankar thought, he's doing the ballerina dance. Well, he's come crashing down, hasn't he? What changed was that over the past quarter of a century, India's political class began to see the US as the country's natural partner. Almost everybody is BJP and the kids are in the US, right? This tilt has led to a curious unbalancing of India's foreign policy. Its feet firmly planted in strategic autonomy, India has leaned towards the US to get close and personal via alliances that aren't quite alliances and vibes that aren't matched by substance. India's policymakers under Modi assumed that India's aggregate economic heft and its growth rate had elevated it to the world's top table, not realizing that India doesn't have economic heft and it doesn't have a growth rate, right? The fact is, India isn't rich enough or white enough or English speaking enough to be a charter member of either the West or the Anglophone world, right? Western benevolence has always been predicated on Western hegemony. Once the climate crisis and China's rise made it clear that the West supremacy wasn't future-proof, once the promise of steady economic growth, the modern measure of secular progress, became unredeemable, Western centrists began to cede from world order they had created in their pomp. For all the liberal hand-wringing about Trump's crudities, where he leads, the European political class will follow. Modi, like Indian prime ministers before him, is learning that geography can't be transcended, that non-alignment isn't a choice, it is a necessity. India's place in the world will often present it with grim, constrained choices. It can't square up to the US as China does as an equal, nor can it kowtow to Trump as the EU has, like a client looking for protection. India will continue to walk a tightrope, teetering this way, then that, as it negotiates a hostile world under the watchful eye of its vulnerable people. Unfortunate. It all has to do with our divisive politics and economics. Inside the Trump land, things are not as good. Trump warms up to Beijing, says Chinese pupils welcome, sparks a MAGA backlash. How the US is ceding Asian geopolitical space to China, says Atul Mishra. Now it's becoming very clear, right? She and China will not invade Taiwan while I'm in office, says Trump. He keeps daydreaming, right? And like I said, this is what he was doing. We've lost India, Russia to deep, dark China, says Trump. Inaccurate India on Navarro. We've lost India and Russia to deepest, darkest China. US has lost India, Russia to darkest China, says Trump. And still he's trying to get to become buddies with Trump, right? With Xi. Modi welcomes Trump's remark on special ties. I mean, what a somersault, right? Always friend, says Trump. Fully reciprocates, says Modi. Didn't take him 1 second, right? Modi, Trump have always been good friends, says him. Look at the relief on his face, man. Like a little puppy dog. Trump shifts tone, says ties with India special. Trump warns EU over 3.5 billion fine on Google. Still no word if Trump will travel to India for Quad week. That is also a reality. Despite Trump's peace overtures, experts offer word of caution. Like I said, it just doesn't make any sense, but this is also a reality. 5 Indian CEOs to attend Trump's tech dinner at White House. This is also a reality. Apple's India sales hit 9 billion after retail push. Also a reality. More reality. Can't apply abroad for short-term visa, says US. So they're squeezing people-to-people contact. Also a reality. HAL GE may ink deal for 113 more jet engines. Also a reality. HAL JE deal for LCA MK1A likely by next month. Everything is likely, right? Trump asked Norwegian minister about Nobel Prize newspapers. Is also a reality. He asked Modi too, right? India in touch with US on penalty tariff, says FS. Right. We are always in touch. Will we get there? We don't know. But the United States and the rest of the world, now you figure this out. Right? We, as whatever color we are not white. So that's a truth. We got to make our space. Neither are we in the exalted structure of what China considers the Middle Kingdom. We are left there all on our own. Until we build our economy, which unfortunately we can only build with the assist from the Western world, we are going to be flying a kite. Three cheers.
Donald Trump says Iran can be erased. When generals whisper of bunker busters and tactical firepower, and when Israel's skies glow with the sparks of retaliation, I do not stay silent. I will not let the world be dragged into chaos by those who speak louder than they think. Mr. Trump, this is not a game of missiles. This is the fate of millions. And to those who cheer from the sidelines, know this: every threat you make echoes far beyond your borders, and every move you make pulls this world closer to a fire. We may not survive, but Britain knows war. We've stood at the edge of destruction before, and we did not flinch. We've seen bombs fall, cities burn, kings flee. But we never bowed. Now, once again, the world teeters, and I say, we will not be dragged by ego. We will not follow fury, but if forced to rise, we will rise with fire in our chest and steel in our voice. To my people, stand tall. To the world, look to Britain not for war, but for wisdom.
There's a fire of a new day coming round. It's a feeling like a cool rain coming down. It's a rhythm of a new song singing. It's a rhythm of a new song singing. Oh my, times are changing. Oh my, times are changing. Oh my, I've been waiting.
चेहरे बदलते गए और कुछ नहीं बदला।